Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We will call the meeting of Highland School Board to order. Can we get a roll call by the clerk, please? Ash? Here. Bomkamp here. Drury?
Here.
Glanville?
Here.
Mitchell? Here. Jaeger? Here. All right, everyone, please join me.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this meeting given to the public pursuant to Wisconsin statute 9.84. Second. Motion and a second. Please say aye. And we'll move on to the approval of the May 11th regular meeting work. And jury invite Shivik to the regular meeting of May 11th. Is there any discussion? Or say aye. 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 Opposed? Passes. And moving on to the vouchers and expenses, right?
You click on to the first page. Come down about a third of the. There's a bill for sources of strength training for 3,000, eventual grant renewal 1,000, and we belong AOD 4,000, so that's 5,000 that were paid out to these things, but they're all reimbursed with a grant. So we put the money out and it comes back to us. And put a 3 to the top of the page is 24,616, and that is getting replacement smart boards, and then through the ESSER or the COVID relief fund, so that will be allocated toward that. Professional for 7,000, that is our professional services for Borgman and Clark for services from January. We also have just some things, bullying prevention software for $700. Farther down, up tuition. These are classes full credit, and where kids can get high school, college credit. Again, these are supposed to be monitored, so the most you can get reimbursed 18 credits. So that's a district's cost, and then after that would be on the parents' expense. So some kids, lots and lots of credits, the district will 18. Then there you'll see down here, there's a lot of things that are more software renewal, like software for third period. Farther down, Infinite Campus, that's student information software renewal, $4,600 on that. Wrestling co-op with Iowa Grants, $150. So that's our share of the co-op. $3,000, our Skyward Financial, we host that at in another way, so we don't host all the equipment and have to keep everything and back it up. So that's an annual fee for the financials is $3,000. Mitchell Design, that's the newsletter, $2,000, and that's the postage, sending it out, all those things together. On the back page, just again, we speech, Becky Cody with Dale, so 8,972 is payment of that, last one of the year for that. Six River Conference dues, 2,200. Athletic renewal, 5,000, and that lower than allows. Linda had pointed out that we insure for interscholastic athletics, but insure accidents happen like on the playground and Fayette. Those things are not covered by insurance. We offer that to parents. They can purchase that on their own, but it's an accident policy that covers both middle school and high school, but interscholastic insurance injuries. And what that does, it comes in after the parent's insurance. It doesn't pay for all of it. It pays part of that, makes that up. But that's why athletic is on that. There's some more classes we're doing through online through summer school. Through Southwest Tech for $3,397. If it's through summer school, we count the minutes of the kids that are in class, and that can add up. And if you get enough minutes, the number is 47,600 minutes. That counts as having another student in school. So that's how summer school generates money to help pay for some of these costs. And the goal is to actually to make a little money, or at least break even, not to go back, not to lose money, and then still provide opportunities for kids. At the bottom of the page, back up in the middle, we have 2,638. That's the School Board Association annual membership dues, and with that you get, there's policy perspective updates. There's some expertise we can call on up to a certain point and get help with lots of things throughout the year if we have just general questions, those type of things. Second to the last thing is for iPads, $15,715. So Brad Tucker found funding through an emergency connectivity fund. So as he put it, out of what we're supposed to get out of a $440 iPad, 400 paid for each iPad, and the district's cost would be about $40 per iPad. So that's a real good deal there. Any questions on any of these? I just hit the larger ones.
Are we on pace for the summer school? I think you said something about if we get a certain number of minutes, that counts as an additional student. Are we trending to hit that with the number of kids in summer school?
We usually get, I don't know how many are, it started this week, I don't know how many actually are in all classes. But we usually get about the equivalent of as high as 10, 8 to 10.
Students worth of minutes?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been really good. And then we got some increase through the summer school, through Southwest Tech, also with kids, so that's worked out, and drivers, that all goes through there, so we can get an update by the end of the month. Be a good idea.
Make a motion to approve the expenses and vouchers.
Yeah, second.
A motion by Drury and a second by Glanville to approve the current expenses and vouchers payable. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the public appearances before the board, not for action. Are you all here to speak with the board tonight? Just here to listen. Okay, so this is the portion of the meeting where anybody would have the opportunity to speak if they would like to do that. Okay. On to announcements and reports. First up, Josh.
Yeah, quite a bit of stuff on my list tonight. Obviously, we're setting the teaching assignments for next fall with the retirements that we had, replacing staff, and then a little adjusting in our elementary. So with some numbers shifting, we're looking at now splitting the second grade class that was split this year. So it's first grade this year, obviously. And then our 4K class coming into 5K, those numbers are smaller. So we're looking at the intern for that position. So right now, today, getting the approval through DPI, and then we'll look at, we already interviewed an intern. So we should be set, hopefully, if all things go well. But as you know, obviously with summer, many things can change with teachers and all those things, but so far, we're looking pretty good.
Sorry, do you mean the classroom would have an intern in there, or you would split it in half?
Well, both, we would,
Because I know
So
you've
can
done
it-
it both ways.
yeah, an intern can teach, that's why so they can. So what we're gonna do is, our goal right now is to, obviously, they'll start the year together, get to know the kids, come up with their, you know, as far as teaching and get the intern's feet under herself a little bit. And then when we do some core stuff, then we'll split them as much as we can, so we can obviously work in smaller groups. And then they'll do some stuff where they'll team teach, but the intern can teach up to 50% on their own. So
Do you have space for her to have?
we do actually, we use what we're calling the STEM room right now, used to be the computer lab.
Mhm.
So if we want to split them up, we can use that room too. Professional development at the end of the year, we had the staff in for 4 or 5 days at the end of the year here. We brought CISA 3 in to do a 2-day training, and it went really well. The staff come in to start with, you know, it's a long year. They're coming, they're tired, you know, but by the time it was over, they were very glad that we did it. So it just talked about, basically talked about different zones that you were in, and everyone's in 1 through 7. And we talked about, you know, the advantages of each one. And then when you don't want to be in that zone, to recognize that and how you can get out of that when you want to, or some ways to. So if the teacher knows how to do that, now we can understand better how to relate to kids. And it kind of filters down all the way through. So it was really good. So we did some talk afterwards, and we were really proud of and really happy with how it went. So wanted to share that with you. Graduation obviously happened since our last board meeting. So all our graduations, 5K, 8th grade, and promotion, I guess, and then our high school. I thought the speeches were great. I just want to publicly recognize all the people that gave scholarships to the kids. Kids did a great job of getting their stuff in, and a lot of money was given out to get those guys started for next year, so that was great. Summer school, as Mr. Bird mentioned, obviously we started summer school. We have the workout programs here, and kids have been using all over the school, going outside, doing some stuff, so that's going well. We got a lot of numbers here for the cardio and the workouts, keeping kids moving and in shape over the summer, so that's been great. Locker room is started now. As you remember from our last board meeting, we're trying to update the girls' locker room, so we got the lockers out. It was easier and we were able to keep them together. I know we were concerned about having to just rip them out and not be able to reuse them or sell them. We are gonna be able to sell them, so that'll be nice. Then we started the process to get that taken care of. The vets wall, if you remember the last meeting, I showed you a picture of what it might look like. So I had a couple staff members come up to me and say, hey, you ever thought of doing it like this? And gave me, it's like, well, I said, we can have them. It doesn't cost any more to get a look at something else. So we're finding out since Brad Tucker's daughter did her senior project, and they came up with, I think I mentioned last time, around 800 and some names. And the way we had it laid out, it was getting a little tight, and we really didn't want to do that. So we're gonna put together another look. We'll show it to you, obviously, next board meeting, hopefully, and see if that's something we want to go to free up some room for more names and free up some room for some more picks, we hope. So that's coming to. And then obviously, the spot we looked at, I think we talked about last time, is moving the plaques down to a different wall and then having the vest wall where those plaques are, so it's out where everybody can see it. The TV is gonna get moved hopefully in the next month here to the spot on the wall we talked about. We can display the graduation pictures and do that on a rolling thing. So as Will and Bethany probably weren't here on board then, but we have as many as we could, graduation pictures digital now and online, so we can roll those through all the years and have those on TV. A lot more schools are doing that, because obviously when you've been long enough, you get a lot of pictures, a lot of space, and all our pictures are at the historical society now. So that's gonna get done here hopefully soon. We got credit recovery started for some students that need that this summer. I want to meet with Dan Swinehart again this summer, and I asked Jeremiah Johnson, who lives obviously right next door to the school, to go through our safety plan again. We look at it every summer, but just want to make sure we're updated on that and go through that with all the staff here before school starts next fall. Talk about when we want to do our trainings, and if we want to do any practice drills. We usually do 1 or 2 a year. We've always talked about doing an evacuation practice. Maybe that's something we should try this year. People vary on that, if you should do it or not. You know, do you want to do an evacuation practice and let everybody know what your plan is? I don't know. I think we do, even though you do let everyone know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing. I think it's something we should look at. Obviously, we work with the church up there, and that is our site for parent pickup if we do have to evacuate the building. And then obviously where our triage will be and all the different places where we want everyone, you know, in a scenario. So we'll update all that again. And again, I asked Jeremiah, even though he's not, you know, on staff or anything or with the village, but you know, obviously if something happens and he's not working, he's probably going to be the first person here. So at least let him know what our plan is. And if he's got any questions, and he needs to, he's right here. So I think that's a good idea. We'll do a diversity survey. I talked about that before. I'm gonna start that this summer and get that out. We'll start with the staff and then go to the community, and then I'll probably bring it back to you guys first and see how far we want. If we're gonna go to all the community or just the parents of our students that we have in the building, to see where we want to go with that. I think. Well, last, the computer apps have started, so we started it the last couple of years. It's been a good thing for our freshmen to come in, that they can take computer applications in the summer. So it frees them up. It's just a class that we, it's required for them, but if they can take it in the summer, that frees them up. They can possibly do, you know, for example, if they want to do band and art, they can still do it, where before freshman classes is, anyone that's got older kids now knows it's pretty tight. We have a lot of options other than what's required. So if they take computer apps in the summer, it frees them up for another class earlier. So got good numbers, around 20 that are taking that, so. I think that's it for me. Any questions?
Yeah, that CSA 3 meeting that you had with the teachers, is there anything that you put in place to track or to follow up with teachers to see if they've implemented those techniques that they learned to like get out of a certain level if they don't want to be there? Like what's the next step after they've been trained? Is there a way to make sure they're utilizing that?
Yeah, actually, we I just had another development today with the same person. I went to CSAT, another staff member go with me, and we did talk about ways and where, when we do our next fall before school starts, we talk about those zones again and remember where we're at, right? And then we talked about, okay, what is our plan if you have a student in this situation, or if you are, right? What do you do? So we wrote down some things. It was Lindsay Jackson, our school psych, and I. So I think we will have a pretty good plan. I don't have it obviously done yet, but I think we'll have a pretty good feel of where we want to be, so.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Price, you're up.
It was last week, we did a PDP verification meeting, so that's on our salary schedule, what people put in for approval. Then, and after it's approved, at the end of the year, we have these verification meetings to see if they've actually completed their plan. So we went through 10 reviews. 6 of them are moving on the salary schedule. One will move. There's different things tied to these, so it's always very informative. I want to thank Andy and Beth for coming up. We had 2 other board members that were also waiting in the wings if we needed them, but we're able to do these during the day. It's always, when you get in these meetings, it makes me feel good about really the cool things and the innovative things that we're doing, and feel good about the staff members that have presented and how things have worked out that way. Transition planning, Randy Refsland will be replacing me as superintendent. He was here in May for a day. He will be back here on the 29th of June, for a day to work on some things and do some wrap up with me and other staff. We're going to need a board meeting at the end of June to finish out the budget and approve all the purchases. So it'd be nice if you could meet him on that night, meet him in person. That'd be a Wednesday, the 29th. And also, we may do interviews for the Dean of Students position, because we talked about that last board meeting where if him and I were both in on those interviews, along with a couple board members and some staff members. So I guess at the end of the meeting, if there are board members that want to be on that, let us know and we can kind of coordinate that. And how this has worked for me in the past, generally there's things you go through, but a lot of times there's follow-up phone calls is how it's usually handled. That phone calls or emails or texts that you want to check on this, or how is this set up, or did you have a plan for this? So with the superintendent, we'll go back and forth a little bit. Don't plan on being back here at all in July, but corresponding through the phone or emails and that. So a lot of times it's pretty brief for a lot of people because there's other people around that also help that person out, and everybody generally also has their own network of people, but I'm certainly available to help after I'm gone here. But it's, like I said, it's generally emails and texts and some phone calls. I want to talk a little bit about the future, though, the referendum that will be coming 3 years out. So the reason for the timing of this, we have building debt. When you finance the elementary building, that elementary building will be paid off after 3 more years. So it drops off after the 24-25 school year. So next year and the following year, so the next 2 years would basically be planning years. And you would go to referendum the 24-25 school year. And the reason for the timing is, so right now there's like a $270,000 payment, and that's taxed to the taxpayers. So you can do improvements to the school, you can do remodeling, fix roofs, fix any heating or cooling systems, whatever needs to be done. And you can structure it so that there's very little tax impact, where the tax stays, when that payment drops off, it's replaced by another payment, so it's very, very much the same tax. The last couple of years, the taxes have gone down about $100,000 for the district. And that all depends on the state formula, the valuation of the properties, and of course, the state formula puts limits in place, so you can only tax to a certain amount without a referendum. So part of the debt will drop off, and that's the time you can ask to replace it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is there's going to be quite a bit of planning involved, and some of it involves, fixing things like we're going to need to replace the elementary roof. So we know that, kind of put a patch on it a year ago to get us to the end of the time when we could do the referendum. But there's also things like the tech ed shop. It was talked about a couple of years ago when I was hired, of what are we going to do with our ag and tech ed facility, but we're going to have to decide how we're going to use that, what kind of courses we'd offer, what kind of, anything new we're going to put in there. Would you tie the greenhouse? Would you connect it somehow? Is it necessary? What kind of things would you do with that? Do we have to add square footage? Do we keep the same square footage and just, kind of repurpose the rooms, along with other things in the district? And some of the new things out there, they trying to design spaces so it can be flexible, have many uses, and can have some open areas of things that can be used for small groups, or you can, some parts can be converted into classrooms for part of the day. So there's quite a bit of things to decide how we would want to go forward. Then there's the element of working with the community. And so all that is coming, and it'll come on quicker. I mean, this time goes by fast. So that's some of the things that we'll have to start looking at next year and getting a direction. But one thing that I see is mapping out a direction primarily for tech ed and ag. What things do we feel like we need to provide, and anything that we need to be more modern or cutting edge? Some people, I've heard from some people that want more just production agriculture. Trades are big right now, as they've always been, but less and less people in them, more and more demand for people in the building trades, all areas, and there's a lot of opportunities for kids. So it's just a combination of things. But the reason I'm talking about that is because you can't design any improvements to the facility until you know what you're going to do. It's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. So there's going to be a lot of planning, and then working with staff, probably visits to other programs that are good programs. And then I think about that, I think about, if you're going to look at model programs, look at ones that are close to our size. I mean, you could look at, I know that certain districts, their classes go out and build houses, and other ones do a smaller scale that they build like yard sheds and garden sheds and things. So there's just different things to scale, and other large metropolitan areas have partnerships with manufacturing, although we have manufacturing, close by, and there's just a lot of innovative things you can do. But I guess I'm kind of really seeing now the need. We talked about some things we'll talk about later on from the policy, from the building and grounds meeting, but just deciding or getting a direction on the possibilities with facilities. And I'm just talking about ag and tech ed. I don't know if there's anything else in the elementary end. If things are done differently, there's all kinds of people with different therapies and different breakout groups and special needs kids. So the building was designed, over 20 years ago, or around 20 years ago. So all that programming and how we're gonna use things, we have to, figure that out. To decide, I mean, the easier decisions are, yeah, we're gonna replace the roof. We figure out the best way for that, but we're gonna do that. And there's some other things that we know we're going to upgrade, or do, but, for facilities, we have to decide how we're gonna use parts of the building. Um, So again, the timeline is, we got a couple of years, but it's gonna go pretty fast because 3 years out, you wanna hold a referendum in that year, so you have to have a plan probably by the end of 2 years to know, to start to make sure people give you feedback and see what people think about that. And then, the third year out, you'll vote, and if it goes well, then it takes effect the following year. So it's just something to keep in mind. We gotta get the ball rolling on planning, and I would say you start with planning, mainly with, how we're gonna use the building. Any questions? Okay. Talk more later. The other thing is that summary, that's next on policy, typically that's supposed to be, I didn't pay attention close enough to that. It's supposed to be, that's linked to building and ground, is what I wanted.
Moved it.
Yeah.
I figured we already moved it.
All right, thanks for covering.
Okay, moving on to the policy committee update. We met on May 23rd and we will be reviewing Neola update, second reading during the policy development and review. And then we also went over the activities handbook, which we will talk to you all about in the business. So do we have a buildings and grounds committee update?
Last week, June 1st, Joyce was starting to get into that. We met with consulting firm Smithville for 90. They want to come in and we want to have a special meeting for the whole board. So they want to kind of tell us what they do and help lead us into planning for that possible referendum. So we'll talk about that later. And then the only recommendations, we wanted to try to get an approval on new cabinets for Ms. Jackson and Ms. Heston. Is that great?
Yeah, we're gonna move some offices around, and so we need a place for the dean of students. The counselor is gonna go a couple places down the hall, so kids can also go to the counselor from going in the office, so it's a little bit more private. And Barb is going to go to the smaller room in the office where she has a chance to shut her door and do some work. So there's some kind of a shuffling, but the dean of students and the counselor, between the two of them, they're going to have workspaces and some shelves and cabinets. So we want to pursue that and get going on that.
So we need some kind of approval on that or motion?
Motion for the,
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second.
okay, so we have a motion by Schmick and a second by Baumkamp to approve new cabinets for Mrs. Hesley and Mrs. Johnson's class or rooms. Yes.
Yes.
Jackson, not Johnson. Okay, is there any discussion about that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Anything else?
We need to set the date for the.
I was. No, I'm glad you said that. Like, when,
I wanted to set a date, and then I don't know if you want to include the new superintendent. Have him set that date with the board.
okay,
Because that's part of the reason for waiting until he comes. So I was looking at the third Friday in July, but that's when you're at Josh, and he will be at the law conference. So it could be the probably the earliest is the last Friday in July, but maybe when he gets,
He's at that too, is he not?
he's at the law conference, so I don't want to schedule stuff. Probably need to have him schedule.
So it has to be a Friday, is that what you're saying?
I say Friday, I meant Wednesday.
Okay. Okay. So we'll talk about it when he's here, maybe the 29th.
Maybe the
and then-
29th to set it up.
Okay, and maybe if, he might even not be able to set it up quite yet.
Right, could be, I mean, it
Could be like the next board meeting in July, we talk about it.
and it could be August meeting or something, but I
Okay.
think we need. One thing it's easy to put off and then the semester goes by, I think if you look in the summary, if you read the summary, he has the fee we asked, they put a number to that fee of $4,500 if the walkaway fee, if, so they're getting a bit more details. If you look at that summary, also, they have initials. That is the architect. Later on, it's PRA or whatever it's the name of the architect firm that they work with. So anyway, that's what I would say. I would kind of correspond with Randy and say that, that's what we want to do, but you need to pick a time when we can be here and they'll present to the full board.
Any other discussion? Okay, we will move on to the nurses report.
That's just a written report. And she kind of does a summary of what she had this year, and then she has general duties each month. That school nurses do each month, so. Coordinate a lot of things, and depending on the years, there's kids with different needs with diabetes and different kind of situations that she has to monitor with the help of people in the office sometimes, depending on what it is.
So in the duties, Bryce, for July and August, how many hours does she put in the summertime? She,
Not very much.
Oh.
She'll come in August, like at the end of August,
okay,
and I would think it'd be maybe come in one day in July and do some of these things that she's indicated here. So generally, they work a few days after school is out, and then a few days before school starts, and they have so many days in their contract.
In her nurse's report, it said many of our staff are certified for CPR and first aid. Is that not a requirement that all staff be certified?
I don't think it's a requirement to be all certified, it must not be voluntary.
Staff is not, coaches.
Yeah, it says our coaches are.
Are required.
Coaches are, they get alone, they get away from school or out in practice fields or traveling, so they may not have the help that the people in the building would.
It is a little surprising. I mean, in case of an emergency, things get hectic and the teacher may not have their wits to know which teacher is or isn't certified. I mean, just kind of surprised that that's not a requirement.
How many EMS do we have on staff? Just you. We have, what about the fireman? It's Mike? But he's not, they're trained to a certain extent on a couple of them. Coach also.
We need to approve something.
We do not.
No.
No. Anybody has any more questions? First reading. Anything else? Moving on to policy development and review, the second reading of the Neola updates. You all remember Neola is the company that does all of the looking into what we need to have for policies based on the laws, and they give us those updates. Is that twice a year?
Twice.
Twice a year, yeah. Make sure, and I think this time they did a lot of wording changes to make sure that we were in compliance. And this is the same thing that we looked at last.
I'll make a motion to approve it, but I'm on the policy, committee, so I've already read all this.
Second.
We have a motion by Schmidt and a second by Jury to approve the second reading of the Neola updates. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next for the agenda is new business, and we'll start with the activities handbook.
Hey, we're going to get that up on that screen so we can all follow along. That's our goal, but we've had our attorney look through the handbook, mid-year. And then also, we've met, I think, 3 separate times altogether with the committee. And looked at some other schools' handbooks, so some things we definitely want to get changed on here, but we'll just kind of go down through here. And if you look at what your document is, when we strike through something, obviously that means we cross it out, we're taking it out. When it's red, that's things that we're adding in. And so we're trying to make it kind of a working document that way. You get one little light on.
Doesn't seem to want to turn on.
Get closer to the projector, do we know if that doesn't it? We just follow along. Everybody get this document up and see it? Okay. Josh, you want to take the first part about academic eligibility?
Sure, that hasn't changed since previous years. Obviously, they have to have 3 season 0Fs each quarter. Eligibility goes by first quarter, first semester, third quarter, second semester. So no changes there on that.
It's okay, Barb.
One thing we want to highlight this fall, though, it talks about here, they changed it where as far as number 4 there on that first page, non-school participation. It didn't change for us from last year to this year because it was in here last year as well. However, there was some controversy with, it talks about events. So one person thought like they're in a tournament in the summertime, they were in a club softball tournament, for example, and they thought that was one event. Well, it turns out if they played 3 games in that tournament, that's 3 different events, they're now ineligible. So we want to make sure we clarify that with the community here this fall. That's it for page 1 for a change.
About the middle school, you added in the middle school. You've made that part of the code now, right?
Yep, that's on page 2. Top of page 2 there, we talked about taking out, and then we made 1 week after the quarter ends, that's when we'll, the grades will count. As you can see, we crossed out the submission deadline, we'll just make it 1 week, so it's easy to recognize when that day will be. And then we added the middle school change there at the bottom, you can see that. And the reason we did that is if you do like 15 days after the grades are due, if you take a 6-week season for a middle school, and then you do the 15 days, so they pretty much cost them their season. So we changed that down there so the middle school programs are, justified. So. And then academic imperative, I don't know if you guys have questions on that. I know that some people can be confusing, but there's no change on that from last year to this year.
And next on the appeals board, the appeals board was written differently. One of the things we didn't want students on the appeals board. I think students have a place for input, but when they're asked to have, if something went to an appeal, students are asked to decide whether their peer can be involved with an activity or a sport, or if they're going to be suspended. I don't think they should be put in that. So the appeals board now, we're saying would be composed of the district administrator, but not the principal, 2 athletic coaches, 2 staff members, 2 co-curricular advisors. So you're getting a kind of a wide range of people at school, and it doesn't say teachers, so it could be any staff members that are involved with the school, and that they can also be an alternate in a kind of a conflict of interest, but mainly to have an appeals board without students on there.
We also did take the parent representative off. There used to be a parent representative.
Right.
as well.
Okay. One parent representative.
And just to clarify, it says that since the appeals board will be selected prior to the student activities meeting, we would do that. However, as far as the coaches, it may, we'll just say there will be a coaches on there, so it'll be selected. However, we can't say it's going to be Billy Bob when the situation comes up, and there can't be the situation. Maybe it was, someone on his team or her team. You know what I mean? So,
Or their relative.
or yeah, whatever it may be. So we'll just say the
It would
coaches.
change to
Yeah.
be.
So even though we'll have it selected, but coaches understand this, we may ask them at that time, who it would be.
So we select it for the year.
Yeah.
And then change if we need to. Nothing else until page 4. Into major and minor violations. First of all, under the possession of tobacco or vape products is how the attorney wanted it listed. And we looked at different ways of putting this together and also trying different language, different ways to say it, so there's less, so it's more structured and less left up to interpretation in certain ways, but there's really not a good way of doing it, and a lot of districts had a lot less than this. Because if you go one way, it creates other things, so this is what it ended up, we had offenses may include, but are not limited to, and felony was struck out because for one thing, that the attorney didn't like it if you're charged, the fact that you're charged, that's taken out later. But theft, vandalism, disorderly conduct, destruction of property was added in. Similar conduct that endangers the health, safety, or property of others. Took out misdemeanor also because that is something that law enforcement would have to determine whether it actually is that. But also says whether criminal charges or ordinance citations are issued or not. Also says threatening to engage in such conduct is also a major violation. And took out charged by legal authority. So you don't have to be charged, but if you're involved with cyberbullying, verbal, physical or sexual harassment of another person. And then the fourth one is kind of the felony rule from WIAA that we're all under, so we put that in there. If you're charged or convicted of a felony, a student shall upon filing a felony charges become ineligible for all further participation until the student has paid his or her debt to society, and the courts consider the sentence served, including probation, community service, etc. And that's, so it's covered in there, but that's the WA rule that we're all under, so that there is a charge of a felony, that's how that's taken care of. And penalties, we've kicked this around. One thing we didn't like about how the penalties were was that the second offense, you lost a year of participation. Is that how it went out? So we're looking of chance of going 25% of the season, 50% of the season, the third offense being 100% of the season to keep kids involved more. And then we kind of had a change of plans with that. Actually, Josh came up with the idea after talking to some other people. You want to go over what this is saying?
Basically, we keep it how we had previously, but they can get it reduced by attending counseling with our counselor, for example. So you can see there in page 4, there B, a participant will be suspended from 25% of the regular scheduled contest if the student completes a screening with the student assistant program and completes all recommendations given by the counselor / administration. So it's just another option, where we keep it the same as it was. However, give students another chance to learn, grow from their mistake. And, when we talked to the policy meeting, we talked about, let's say something happens as a freshman and then, it happens again as a junior and they're a whole different person at the time. They grew up a couple of years, but now they lost everything, right, for that year. So should we give them, if they, do what they need to do, more of a progressive consequence system.
That's for the first violation and the second offense, but then after that, there's no more reduction. So third would be a full year, and fourth, you're done with all those activities.
Yeah, but you can see that on the top of page 5.
So it's not for everyone, it's for the first two, but if you're the third time, then you've been to the counselor, you've done the education component, whatever they have you work with and do, it doesn't get reduced after the second one. Or I mean, for the third one, it stays.
I think one thing we didn't talk about, Josh, is like Well, we did talk about kind of what that would look like. It'd be different, you know, if they got caught vaping, there would be like education on the risks and, you know, those kinds of things. So it'll fit whatever their violation was. So it'll be about vaping, or if it's about harassment, then it'll be something that they will come up with that they would have to learn about, and maybe we talked like it being like restorative justice. So like if there's something that they did that they would need to learn about it and do what they need to do to make that right.
So yeah, I mean, the, as far as the counseling / administration, the things that it would be different depending on what it was, as you mentioned. So obviously, if it's drinking, we want to talk about that. If it's vaping, we talk about that. It's bullying.
But everybody who's caught vaping would go through the
Correct.
same steps, so it's not individualized per student, it's per issue.
Right.
But the issues can be so varied, and they might not know what issues they are until they come up, so they might have to be kind of developing things as we go. And then, you know, and a harassment in one regard may be different, but another, they might need to make it, you know, more extensive for one instance than another. But I mean, I think when we talked about it, we all thought that, you know, that was a really good component to this process, because teenagers do things that they shouldn't do, and our job here is to teach them. And so just taking them out of the thing just you know, is just the punishment part, and by adding what Josh is suggesting, then it's the teaching part as well, which is really important.
Any other questions on that section?
Yes, on that section.
We're at the bottom of page 5 right now.
Well, we should go, where do we go through? Yeah, okay. Go through what the penalties are. So on the top of page 6, was added, for purposes of this section, for students involved in athletics, the minimum is 1 game. For students involved with other activities, the minimum is 1 activity. For the purposes of this section, it will be the next game activity, game/activity. So we're trying to clarify there is for athletics, you're going to miss the minimum is a game, and it's also the next game. It's not discretion as far as, you know, go to this game, but next, in a week from now, you miss that game. So we want to take all of that out of there to make that clear. And if it doesn't seem clear, and then you don't get to do an activity, if you're in athletics, you have to miss a contest minimum. The other thing I don't see there, though, we talked about when there's a tournament or a double header situation. So say it's a in violation and Thursday there's a double header. It's going to be that next date of competition. You miss both games. Or if it's a volleyball tournament on Saturday, and that's the next thing, you're not missing the first game and then playing the other 2. It's like, if that's how it falls, you miss that game. So that's going to be luck of the draw. I don't see that. And make sure that that's in there, because that was also important. And, you know, it's simpler in a double header because it's 2 different games. So you miss the 1 game and you're good for the next game. Of tournaments don't work like that, and check with some other schools how they did it, and just know it's the next date of competition. So you're lucky it's 1 game, or could be more, but if it's a tournament and you miss 3 games or 3 contests, it's just how it falls. We have to add that. Is that someplace else? Do we see? I didn't see it.
Oh, we did talk about it.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts given to differences between athletics and other activities? Meaning, like, if you have to miss the next volleyball game or the next baseball game, there's a number of those in a season, but if your activity is a concert, there's only a couple of those where you're gonna miss, like what you decided to do with the middle school, drop it down to a third versus the same 2 weeks. Is it possible to maybe have some kind of a meeting with the counselor or something, so they could get that activity back, so they don't miss, 75% of their activities for the season? I mean, I don't know, but I'm just wondering if there's some things that there's so many less activities
Well, we
involved.
talked about that
in that.
because like Christmas concerts and spring concerts and stuff, so like if you're in choir and band and all those are actually graded activities.
So that you would.
You have to be at that. That's not actually,
But you would miss, if you're only in band and you get caught doing something, the only band activity is the fireside trip. So yes, you're right, they would miss the only thing that they would ever get to go to. And we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about how that is different when you have a full season of
Maybe there's
basketball.
15 games, you'd miss
Right, and you miss-
1/15 of your whole
And
season.
if
but-
if you only are in band, then you miss 100% of your extra activities.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah, that
just a
is not
thought,
something that we
something.
discussed. This is a very, very difficult
There's a million different
policy.
scenarios. how to
There
do it.
is.
Yeah.
And I mean, this isn't perfect at all. I mean, it's all kind of what everybody could live with. How can we make it the best as we could with the information that we have, and we looked at other places, but that's a very good point. Well,
But it's hard, I mean, you have to make it as black and white as possible, otherwise,
right.
the more gray area you leave, then it's favoritism, or, I mean, it's, yeah.
And the other
it's-
thing we really talked about is we want kids to be involved in things. It's very important to have kids involved in things here, especially when they are making bad decisions, because often the place where they're getting a positive reinforcement.
Can you go back to what you were saying, is that self-imposed, where we say if it's a tournament, and there's 3 games, we decide that they can't do all 3, or is that open for potential change or thoughts, because they're playing a different team, just because it's on the same day? Well, it's a different team, it's a different game. They missed the first one, but the next 2 are completely different events. Yeah, it's the same calendar day, but
Well, the reason that we kind of went that way was because you've got, softball that the team could advance to game 3, but then you have a kid who's in a wrestling tournament, and if they don't participate in the first round, they're, they lose out on the day kind of anyway. So that's why when, and as far as
Yeah,
looking at a
yes.
tournament situation, it's just safer to say it's an event and that's it,
makes sense.
but you have a valid point. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Yeah,
That's exactly
Absolutely.
why the conversations went the way they did, was because there's so many different variables to the scenario. And you have a valid point. I mean, you're playing a different person in that tournament, a totally different teammate. It's valid, but
And this is for minor violations, so it's just one thing, it's just
Right.
one game. So, or one event, it's one event. I'm actually really now thinking about what you brought up about and I think that's something, maybe not for this year, but we really should consider, maybe we should look at that differently. Maybe there's a different kind of consequence we can have for kids in that situation.
Well, this is the first reading, so there'll be another reading in July, so it's not final, and to look at things, but so we really wanted to tighten it up so there isn't discretion in some areas, but then when you do that, you lock in, and so now you create other issues, so it's kind of a catch-22.
I mean, maybe the dean of students needs to have some presiding influence over this. I mean, if they're going to be involved in what their job duties are, maybe they can have a say in something like this.
What are
Or-
we thinking for a start date for that person?
We start usually like.
I mean, is that even feasible because we have to have this done before our sports meeting?
Right, I mean, obviously, if we interview, we could possibly, I mean, if we interview beginning of July and hire the person thereafter. And then whoever it is, have them take a look at it ASAP.
we're proposing like a 200-day contract, so they have about, teachers have, 189, they have like a week at the end of this, they have like 2 weeks in the summer, 10 or 11 days in the summer, so they'll be able to flex some of those days, so a lot of times they'll come in, a couple times a month, and then right after school gets out or right before school gets out, but they would be able to use some of their days.
July,
It is
Is what?
July 18th.
but so one thing, obviously, what you want us to look at is the events for a minor violation. So as Will, you were saying, if they play in the morning, let's say it's baseball, just throw it out there, baseball doubleheader, they play Prairie Sheen in the morning, they play IG in the afternoon, right? And they have a minor violation and it's the same day, why should they miss both, right? On the other hand, if someone's in a basketball tournament like we are, for example, in winter time, we play one game one day, we play the next game the next, same tournament, but it's 2 different days. So a kid that missed it in basketball will be able to play the next day. A kid that missed it in baseball, because the same day, misses both games. You're gonna get people that are upset about that, guaranteed, right? And then you get a wrestling tournament, right? So you say, well, he's gotta miss his first match. That's technically a dual meet, right? Then he can wrestle the next one. Well, sometimes you can't. If you miss first, then you're done. So they miss the entire day. So that's why we looked at, well, let's just make it the event, because we cover everything, but some people are gonna miss one, some people are gonna miss 2, some people will miss more. So it's it's Mr. Bird, it's a catch-22. There is nothing, there isn't.
Yeah, I'm not saying this isn't right, I'm just.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I appreciate your point about the activities, because if you've got a kid that just does forensics and I know that they have a great issue, like the week of the contest, they are done. Like, that's their only thing for the year. So, I don't know, maybe there's more validation in looking into some of that. As far as the activities.
Where would we, like,
so that-
I mean, I know, so for Bryce and Josh did a lot of research for us for these other things, for other schools and such. Where could we look about that? Like, what do you, like, how could we think outside of the box with that? Do you
With
think
the.
of- Yes, with these, other, they're bringing
athletic
up, yeah.
activities. Well, I mean, every school's different on that too.
Yeah.
But most of them are, I mean, it's just the way, we've had students miss forensics.
Mhm.
They only do 3 a year and they miss them. And if the one that misses, the one, for example, that's in Platteville, they don't go, they can't go on.
Yeah.
We've had that happen. We've had people miss FFA trips, and it's usually 1 or 2 a year, But
One thing with forensics I've seen where they do, like a forensics, they get judged by local judges, usually staff members, they do it locally, that way they could do a first event, that way they do it every year. However, I guess that would be, we don't allow scrimmages, so if that would be like a scrimmage in a sport. But I know a school up north, they did that, so they got to go through it to prepare them. Is it called regionals, the first round or whatever? Also had pushback from things that said, well, my school play, what if my main actor gets caught with, smoking, drinking, they're out. It's gonna affect the whole play. It was like, well, when certain athletes get out, affects the whole teams. I mean,
So here's my viewpoint as a parent on this one, and I have a child who's only in band as a senior this last year, right? Only band, does no anything else. So if my child was to come home and I have this issue, I would say, well, too bad. I guess you shouldn't have done what you did, and you wouldn't be missing your field trip with the band. You're lucky you still get to go to band class. You're lucky you still get to have band lessons, and you're lucky you still get to be a part of the rest of the things that go on with band. You're welcome. You made the mistake, not me.
And you are exactly right.
So,
I think-
But they are kids, we have to allow for them
Right.
to make up for their mistakes, like, shoot, I screwed up, sorry, my frontal cortex isn't all the way developed yet, I don't
Yeah,
think straight all the
I
time.
get you.
Oh,
Sorry.
and those kids that have are in basketball and they get one, they still get to play all that
Yeah.
time,
I
and
see
it's
your
just-
point, but
Yeah,
As a
and
parent,
they're both,
with
they're
just
all,
one
You're
kid,
not
they're all
wrong.
valid.
I'd be
They're all
like,
valid.
sorry, your
Yeah.
problem. So I would agree, I wouldn't,
That's why this is so hard.
yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to allow for an outsider's discretion, like to be able to look at it and sift through it, but
Yeah.
then you fall into favoritism and I mean,
It's
you're
tough.
always gonna make someone mad. There's nothing perfect.
No,
I mean to open up Pandora's box here, just.
no, yeah, well, these are good questions.
I mean, our goal is just to have this.
And you want school to be
continue-
fair. I mean, you don't want a kid to like leave school hating it because it's not fair. Like, yeah, you screwed up, but I mean, this is still America. Like, you get a chance to make up for it.
Well, you're
You
supposed
still
to.
want the crime,
Yeah, not always.
the punishment to outweigh the crime.
Right. And we want to educate them about what they've done wrong, so that,
Yeah, there for sure should be consequences,
Yeah.
but you don't want to cut a kid's hand off because he took the eraser,
right,
you know?
right. Yeah. So maybe we could relook at this a little, huh? Make some more changes.
I mean, I think I don't know,
But we,
I don't know for sure that there need to be changes or not, but I think that it's the first reading and we can definitely talk about it.
right,
And if you guys wanna come, if we wanna have another policy meeting before next month, then talk through it more, it's not an easy thing,
It appears though, that we do almost. It appears just from the conversation.
I think so.
And we can go through the rest of this and then just like, obviously I got notes on the stuff you said so far.
Okay.
Just finish it up and then obviously it's first reading, we can still do changes and improve it in the second reading, can't we?
And then
Yep.
if you have time to look, give us some ideas of what other schools might do differently.
Sure.
See if we wanna look at that.
Yeah, that's what I have noted here, and then obviously the, all difference, I know what they do, but I just share them again with, as far as how do you do it if it's a weekend activity,
Right.
And like we said, some will do it, if it's an event, it's an event, if it's 2 days, it's 2 days, you miss it, some don't. But yeah, I can share that.
And this has always been my reaction, because it comes up a lot. I've seen a lot, when you try to put them together and you try to get them athletics and then these other activities, they're real similar, but there's differences, but a lot of people, they point out how all the advantages of athletics, all the notoriety and, you're on that big stage all the time, and so you're supposed to adhere to this high level of conduct, and they have these rules in place. But then sometimes these other groups, when maybe their activity doesn't quite fit the same, and like what you're saying is that they have one chance, and it's either you screw up once, you're done for that year. So that's not the same, but other things are the same. A lot of times I've ran into people, they don't really wanna, I think it's too harsh if one of the lead people can't be in the play, it's gonna screw up my whole play. If it happens, a week before, I don't have time to, well, I mean, I've seen it happen where 2 athletes got kicked off the night before the game, and they were brothers, and they were both, one was a quarterback, one was a backup quarterback, and they played, a tough team, and they're behind 30-0. I mean, that's just what happens. And so it's like they kind of talk about how athletics has all these attention and advantage and these perks, but yet when it goes to their activity, or they want it to be treated differently. And I've also seen where, then they try to break it, then they bring it back apart, and you have an athletic code, and then you have an activities code. You treat them separately, but then I see where that gets out of hand. It's like, how can these guys go, I thought they're ineligible for grades. Why are they in this activity? For the same reason you're out of it for athletics. So there has to be enough similarities, so you're working toward the same goal, but it was hard once you try to put them together. It's hard because of the length of seasons, and so athletics has it has games, contests. There's a seasons and there's a number of contests. Other things like FFA is all year long. And how many activities are there? And it changes. And how many events or other things are shorter windows. So it doesn't fit. It's hard to fit it with athletics, so it's real complicated, but then the other thing you're saying is that one, I mean, it's one way or the other, either you would accommodate that, or it's like, it's just these rules, you're supposed to follow the rules and it has consequence, and
You try to balance out fairness and equality, and it's not the same thing.
yeah. So I mean, meet again, and also, if there's anything else to address anything like that, so forensics, some of those things, they just have one thing, I would think of this, what other things would be like that?
Band, choir.
The band is, I mean, those are classes, but when they compete in
They
state,
don't get to do that. Right? They still get to? No, they wouldn't get to do like solo ensemble.
No, song ensemble is not a graded thing, so they would miss that.
so that if I also were to come up that we're the duet saxophone team, and I get caught drinking, now he's out too.
Right.
Solo, baby.
Well, no, you're entered in, or you made it to state as a
A duet.
duet.
Mhm.
Now you're.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So is there anything else further that you wanna?
Yeah, so, or do you want to hit that? Super, go ahead,
for the prom,
take it. All right,
you take it.
we just added there, and you've seen it, bottom of page 6 here, coaches have a meeting with players, we added that, that's already in our coaches handbook, but it wasn't an activity, so we just want to put that in there, so parents know that there's a meeting that they have before each. And then right there, it says prom court, we crossed that out. For example, one time, junior year, right? So we didn't want to have them lose that, so we took prom court out of that.
But it's different here, everybody's on prom court, that's a junior class, right?
Correct. Here it is, that's, we do it Highland, yeah.
Left homecoming court, because that, you're picked,
Mhm.
senior class trip, all that stuff is in there, but we kind of said that prom court is, since everybody's in here, that's not an extracurricular.
Any questions on that? Go to page 7.
This is added in from the attorney, and this, at one time, you couldn't just act on reports like a police report or an OMVI, some knowledge of that. But now that's changed again, and, Eileen Brownlee put that back in there, that you can accept reports, determine whether a violation has occurred. It used to be you couldn't only be like an outside agency, you had to have the kid admit, or another person turn them in, that type of thing. So that's just added back in. Then the next page, page 8, more details about the appeals board.
Would you want to put it in this due process? Would you want to potentially add in dean of students? Says once a written report is filed or provided, the athletic director or principal will conduct an investigation. I mean, is that something that you actually want the dean of students to do instead of you, Josh?
Well, we should, good point, I think we should, what we've done before, athletic or / administration.
Yeah.
I think we're calling this dean of students at an admin position, right? That way it can be,
Either or.
yeah, so.
Yeah.
And most of our stuff
You know what that
says
word?
administration.
And then, but we're trying to keep
One person,
one person
probably
on
you.
Superintendent.
for the appeal, so then they can appeal, because if I'm in on the investigation, then it's hard for me to do the appeal.
Or we can go or principal / designee. That cover that,
You
That
can
way it
name,
could
or
be
you can name dean of students,
or good,
all
as
three.
long as if we say admin, then that covers you, and then technically we don't want that because
Right.
you are in the appeals process.
Yeah.
Did you catch that, Barbie?
So it's for athletic director,
But if you just put admin, whoever wasn't involved in the investigation could then be on.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind
Still
of like,
like that.
if there's 3 admins, super principal and dean of students, any one of those 3 could be on the committee. If, you know, whoever wasn't on the investigation could potentially then hear.
Right.
Please,
So then we
I
could
mean,
still,
kind of a catch-all.
So if
it's
you're
hard
out-
to say admin,
But
Out
it's,
on vacation or something, and
Right.
he has to step in
Right,
to do
right.
it, then you could just stay out of it and be on appeals.
The appeals language you have to change because it says district
Yeah.
administrator.
yeah, it actually says it in
Administrative.
number 2 as well. Will be imposed by the athletic director or principal after meeting. But a third of the way down, number 2, I mean. I don't know.
What if you just did principal / dean in each spot? Athletic director or principal / oh, the. Or not? Or that makes it look like it's one person instead of.
I mean, I just know the main goal of this team of students is to help in disciplinary action, so you don't have to, so the more that person can be in here, the more that's off your plate to allow you to do more principal type stuff.
we can look at those and then update that.
If you guys want me to stop talking, just throw stuff
It's all good questions.
Is there any other questions or discussions about the activities handbook? Changes, so we will set a policy meeting before the July meeting. And have a second reading, hopefully at the July meeting. And we'll move on to the WIAA membership, 2022-23 school year.
Just the format says we want to be in the athletic events. That's be board approved. You see wrestling for both, but you see the same number of sports for girls and boys.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Dury and a second by Glanville to approve the WIAA membership for the 22-23 school year. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next thing on the agenda is requesting approval to utilize school athletic equipment for summer programs.
That's a new requirement from the WIAA. So it's like, you got people in summer programs using the volleyball nets, the, bases, helmets for contact days for football or whatever. So it's just another thing you board approval, we have it in the minutes, so. I think I don't know all the history behind it, but I'm sure there's a reason for getting board approval to use that stuff. And if
I think the reason is, with contact days they have, have so many contact days, and then if the football team comes up and uses school equipment, pads or something, then they count that as a contact day because because they just normally they went to a camp or something. Well, now they have to, so they kind of say, let's clean that up. So they said, you get approval from the board to use equipment, you're covered that way. You're not technically losing contact days. Does that make sense?
contact days means, you're limited to how many days that coaches can work with their kids outside of the season, so you're not coaching year round.
So you can use this equipment even when it's not a contact day, that's what we're approving.
Yeah, for example, if the girls' basketball team goes up and has an open gym, I'm not there. They're using the school's basketballs. Well, technically, what I have to count this contact is school equipment.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Jury and a second by Jaeger to approve the use of school athletic equipment for summer programs. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is the agreement with Wazika Steuben for the Spanish program.
So I had Eileen Brownlee, our attorney, draft this up and explain the things that we wanted to have done. So we would be teaching Spanish here, and then the Wazika Steuben's kids, there would be two classes, Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. So two different class periods. They would be able to, they'd be Zoom, Zoom or Google Classroom or whatever, but they're both, okay, so they're in Wazika, but they're into our classroom, so we would charge them $250 per student for the first semester, and this is just only for the first semester to see how this goes. Another thing is payments made in full by November 22nd. They've got like 1 week to drop ads, so they can't, if somebody drops out in October, they're still gonna get charged. Some of those things are in, we're saying it's a pilot program. We want Wazika to put somebody in the classroom. A lot of times they'll have a staff member just sit back on the computer and go through their emails, and so that, you know, we can't control kids from over here. And also there's a cap not to exceed 5,000. And teacher Jackie Johnson would get, you know, we're not setting this up to make money on it for the district. She would get, we're proposing, if this gets done, I'll propose to the board that she gets like $200 out of the $250. And that would cover all of our costs, and if it doesn't, she'll get, we don't want it to cost us anything, because there's some cost to setting this up. Anyway, I sent this also to Wazika. They will be meeting maybe next week on it. If it gets approved, then we'll get something to you guys to approve how we're gonna pay Jackie for this. But it's kind of a standard form that Eileen has put together and made the specifics for the Spanish program.
Is there an idea of how many more students would be participating in your class?
Yeah, I think it's maybe 8 in one and 6 in another.
From Wazika?
Yeah.
How many are in your class now, or will projected to be?
For us.
Yeah.
It's usually bigger in the Roshi's, the big class coming in. So Spanish 1, 2 sessions possibly, and then obviously it gets pretty not exponentially, but quite a bit smaller as they get. Spanish 4 this last year, for example, was probably one of the biggest ones. We had 8, I think, right in there. But next year we won't have, you know,
But you bring that up because that's why it's a pilot. If we find out that it's, you know, put an accommodation of 30 students in one period between, I mean, now we're kind of overloading the teacher and, you know, so we'll have to see how, you know, how we do that, or if we continue, or if we come out, we have to put limits. And so if they're gonna take Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, we may get a senior taking Spanish 1 or 2 just because they couldn't get into it, because we only accept X amount of students, first come, first served from each student, so it's kind of a learning curve.
that's what we did on a semester instead of a year. You know, we said we're gonna pilot for a year and see how it goes, but we cut it back to a semester. If it's not gonna work, we wanna, you know, depending on how Ms. Johnson does and how it goes with the students at Wazika, it's not working out, we're not gonna give it a year, we're gonna shut her down in a semester. But then again, we wanna, like we said, we wanna help one of the districts. Obviously, we've asked for help, we've had students take classes with other districts too, so we wanna make sure we're, you know, give it a shot.
I think it's important to note that Johnson came in here and she seemed very excited about it, and she thinks that she can be successful.
Yeah,
So,
obviously, if we didn't think she could have that, she is extremely organized. That woman has her ducks in a row.
You need a motion. I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Okay, you have a motion by Schimick and a second by Landville to approve the agreement with Quasi Gustubin for the Spanish program. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Next is to review the 22-23 CISA 3 contract.
So attached a breakdown of some things that Jimmy Nutter had sent me when I contacted him after our last meeting. In 3 areas, team relations highlights, safe and healthy school environments, and then also the crucial conversations for civil rights. But we've got some different things going on. Josh is signed up for a 3-day law conference, as in Mr. Refsland both, and it's one most superintendents go to that, some special ed directors and other people, but it covers a lot of these things with civil rights. Plus, we're also bringing in that program in the fall to train some staff and then go work with the kids in some of those areas. The work that Josh is doing, through CISA just lately. And it just seems like something we just don't want to duplicate in some of these areas. And these are things, also, the CISA director, Jamie Nutter, is pretty flexible. So if, let's say something would change and we really think we need something, they'll let you in, they'll prorate some of it, or they just want to help us. So at this time, my recommendation is not to add these things in. I know that, one of the top ones here, the teen relations, I mean, there was special programming if somebody was, was pregnant and in high school yet. So a lot of times you give them these services that helps them out quite a bit. It helps them do stuff, gives them a peer group and specific people that will work with them. So I'm recommending not to do that. But there is another area that I'm not asking to approve tonight, but Linda and I are looking more into it with, it's called ESSA application management, and there's some new requirements because now we're using ESSA funding. And with some of that, you have to show, one thing is some of the funding has to show that it is best practice, or it's something that is, research. So 20% of the money in some areas has to be used on that. And there's more of a narrative of what targets, what your goals are, and then what write up things. It's not so much managing the budget because, Linda does an excellent job with that, but it's setting up these targets, and we need help. We haven't done it quite that way before, so that's a $2,500 cost. And we may be able to use ESSER money to pay for that cost. And it's something that maybe you do it for just a year or two, and then you wouldn't need to do that, after the ESSER money goes away, or maybe after 2 years, you know how to do it. I mean, we used to have something like that. I'm talking to Linda today, and I think that when Nancy was here after a while with the normal Title I funds, and it's like they just didn't think it was necessary because between Nancy Hendrickson and Linda, they could handle it as we did, the last couple of years here, but now with the new stuff. So we may bring that back. We want to sign up for that, but we'll get some more information about it, for the next meeting. So I guess I'm asking for no change.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I just had one thing that came to mind. Josh, where did you, that makes sense that it would be duplicated. Where did you find the program that we are going to use for the civil rights, for the diversity stuff, since we didn't go through CISA? Is that something
That's
that?
the one we're doing with Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah.
From, awesome.
Yeah, but like, did you find that from another district? or how
Yes,
did you?
actually, Riverdale actually
Okay,
gave me this one that they're doing with her.
okay.
So they,
okay.
according to my wife anyway, and the administration, I loved it, so.
So we can-
saw is his principal's professional organization, state organization.
Okay. thank you. And
Yes,
motion.
I guess I do want to, since you made the motion, so the discussion part, I do want to note in there that the reason that we're not, as Mr. Bird says, is we have plans or
Right.
programs in place.
Yep.
So, and then as Mr. Bird said, if something comes up where we think we need a little more, Jamie Nutter, who is the CSA administrator, has been awesome, and say, hey, yeah, we can add this and not, prorate our fee, so we still be set.
Do we approved the contract last time?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Yeah, this is just for those
You're
additional.
right, we
things.
do not, correct. Okay, so moving on to personnel items. The next on the agenda is teacher retirement, and everybody should have the letter from Mary Kay McCarthy, who is retiring after 33 years here. I just want to say thank you to Mary Kay for her 33 years of service to the district and the positive impact she's had on so many kids that have entered her classroom.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept. Granted.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Drury and a second by Schmick to accept the retirement of Mary Kay McCarthy. And any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Teacher contracts.
You guys able to open?
Mhm.
So it's listing your contracts with the raises and we approve their actual contracts. And some of that had to wait until last week when we did the salary schedule, the PDP approvals. That's reflecting all of that. I opened mine though.
So we've already approved all of their that well basis and such.
Right. It just shows it as it's applied, but
But we still need an approval.
right, for all these are all action items under personnel.
I'll make a motion to approve teacher contracts for 2022, 2023. Second.
A motion by Schmick and a second by Baumkamp to approve the teacher contracts for the 22-23 school year. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And next is the supplemental contracts.
These are, people have certain positions. Like most school, every school is required to have a library media coordinator and of course athletic director. And this just shows how things are broken out for these supplemental contracts. Sean Ryder was the health and fitness coordinator for the community, and he doesn't want to take that position, so we may post that internally and make sure that we bring somebody back for that position, so we didn't put a name in there.
I'd also like to just do a little edit there, instead of athletic director for Lynn Mitchell, we could make that activities director. instead of just athletics. We talked about, I think it's just gonna help us just stay more organized, so everything from somebody, I mean, everybody that lines up everything through Miss Michigan, she's got the master calendar, so I think just more organized for everyone, especially community members that wanna, know what's going on. Guest speakers, all that stuff, we can go through her then.
Is there any change on compensation with it being more broad, just name change?
You'll talk to her about it?
That actually might even.
Like save her some time.
Save her some hassle,
Yeah.
If we just make that, go for approval, Andy.
Yep.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the supplemental contracts for 2023.
Got a motion by Bumkamp and a second by Jaeger to approve the supplemental contracts with the edit to activities director. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And administrative and non-union support staff contracts.
These need to be approved, and it's showing an asterisk here for Director of Information Technology going to 4 weeks vacation, which was, we approved it in a previous meeting. Administrative Secretary, 3 weeks to 4 weeks. Then the school nurse increasing from 20 hours a week to 32 hours a week as a nurse. And showing their rates. The administrator's contract has already been done for next year. So that's why it's not in here.
I'll make a motion to approve the admin non-union contracts.
We have a motion by Schimick and a second by Drury to approve the administrative and non-union support staff contracts for the 22-23 school year. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Support staff wages.
Right, and these, it's just showing, attaching the wage to all of these positions. And technically, these people, they get a, it's not called a contract. It's just intent to renew or intent to employ letter. But again, it's just showing that to have these people back, number of hours.
I'll make a motion to approve the support staff.
Second. We have a motion by Schimick and a second by Jaeger to approve the support staff wages. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And extracurricular contracts.
So this is a list of extracurricular contracts and what their salaries would be next year, what their amounts. Some places where it says hold, we're not offering until we know how many kids are out, like for softball, volleyball, JV baseball, third baseball coach, it says.
We need to take Sean's name out of it. For fitness coach.
Fitness coach is, he gets that, the other one he's not doing is the community.
Okay, so there's different.
There's 2 ones, yeah.
Got it. Can you explain the difference for everybody?
Fitness coach is what they do for the kids in school, athletes in school, and then the community one is to help with the adults and people out of school that are using the facility. Primarily, we got through the PEP grant with all the cardio equipment and all the weightlifting equipment, so he can. The community one is supposed to set up and monitor times when the adults in the community can use.
So the one that he's keeping, the fitness coach, will still be the summer.
Summer, he does it before school sometimes, he does it.
Before school,
It's
that's
during the
it.
school one, and then, yeah,
So
obviously, the summer contracts,
Okay.
he's getting paid for summer school through that, and then when he does before school, after school, during the school year.
That.
Right. And then the other one
So
is,
it's, okay,
right, so the one that, as Mr. Bird mentioned, that he's resigning from is the one that trains community members and then
and that sets up those times. when
corrects
they
his
can come.
attend the community trained and then
I understand.
work out stuff like that. There is a new person on there, as you can see, for volunteers. Just to let you know, Andrew Spencer there is you can see it in the volunteer coaches of football, right next to Josh Stanton's Andrew Spencer. But to add the staff as a volunteer. Garrett Bustina, we kept him on there, depending, he might help out again, depending on if his daughter plays for Edgewood again, so I just want to make sure he's on there in case he does decide to help out again, but depending on whether Grace plays or not this next spring.
I'll make a motion to approve the extracurricular contract.
I'll second.
You have a motion by Schmick and a second by Landville to approve the extracurricular contracts for the 22-23 school year. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, and so the next thing on the agenda is adjourning to closed session, and is that something we do need to do? Yes.
I don't think. Person in here.
Yes, do.
Do you have things you could share with us? If we do,
I mean, I can share, sure.
Okay.
Real quick, I can.
all right,
I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
at 7:47, we have a motion by Schmick and a second by Baumkamp to adjourn to closed session at 7:47. Thank you.
We gotta make sure this shit's shut off. I'm gonna walk down here and see if anybody's down there.
Oh,
In the
yeah.
comments.
Finish.
Yes.
Baumkamp, here. Drury,
Yes.
Glanville,
Yes.
Midget. Schmick. Here. Jaeger.
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you, Josh. It'll be nice that it's still light out when we leave. Look at the sun shining out there.
You know, a lot of this speak.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Jinx
Watch
it.
it.
Better not come
There's no joking about it.
Who's planning it?
Yeah.
policy before the July meeting.
We also set this up so he could have the,
So we'll do
Second
that
reading.
next time.
well, I mean,
Oh.
it could be June,
So before the June 29th meeting, you're saying?
no, before that, I'm thinking when he can be here also, so that,
Oh, you want him to come to the policy meeting?
yeah,
Got
that's why we did it this way, so.
Yes. okay.
July 13th is the July meeting, so maybe the 7th. The Wednesday before, or it could be the 12th, you could do it.
Why don't we just wait until he's here on the 29th and decide with him? For the policy meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's what your intention was.
See, the next board meeting is the 13th.
The regular one, second Wednesday.
That all you have for meetings, Andy?
Policy, yeah, let's say that again.
I need a transportation meeting and I need a
Okay,
B&G.
you need to go before the July meeting?
It's up to you guys. I guess we don't need to. I guess the B&G I'd like to, it's, I'd like to give an update on the locker room where that's at.
Okay,
We got some signage out front, as you saw by the road, that we need to come up with a plan with. And I want to clean up, change the landscape area right next to school. I want to clean it up, plant that seed in there, just make sure everybody's on board with that. We talked about that previously. And then for transportation, I want to discuss with the board a new plan for next fall, drop off and pick up for kids. Just had a couple instances this year that, you know, many times as we put it out there with, hey, please don't pass on, don't do that, wait. We just still have people that do that. It's just one of these years it's gonna hit someone. You gotta come up with something different, so I wanna come up with some ideas. I'm meeting with obviously Mike on it, but what we can do to clean that up, so.
But that's really not, just so it wouldn't be transportation, but it's about adults. And it's just police in our front, so.
Right, yeah, maybe it doesn't have to.
Yeah, does there just need to be more personnel out there?
Maybe, you know, I know Belby does a great job, don't get me wrong, but he stands, opens the door, which is great. Maybe we have to have him stand right in the middle of the highway.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you weren't.
I think the transportation committee meeting is valid for that.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard lots of complaints about it and.
I have complaints about it.
I mean, if you think about it, in like bigger cities, there are people at crosswalks with
Right.
vests and stuff, so I mean,
Well,
you could in theory have something like
I
that right out in
talked
front.
to, the Platteville principal about, they have like cones and you know, you see it on TV where you have to drive to between all of those cones all the way and they take them up and down for every pickup and drop off. And I don't know that that's what we need, but.
Maybe that's the easiest solution, just put cones down the middle so they can't, and, you know, I told parents, you know, the buses come in and they park at an angle, you know, so they can go around them, and I'm telling, hey, do the same thing to drop off your kids. Go and park
Oh,
like this,
right,
and you
but-
know nobody's gonna run, but, not everybody does.
What about the bark in the parking lot right now where we're supposed to pick up our summer school kids?
Well, sometimes there's obstacles in your life. That's the
All
summer
right,
school run.
so hold that, let's do a transportation.
All right,
And, but like, which one is more pressing before July? Buildings and grounds.
if we wanna get something done, that's up to Mr. Bird, do we wanna get something done with that signage before school starts, I hope? Out by the highway where that wind knocked that sign that we put up out, and that the frame around it is shot, so.
You're the,
So probably B&G first,
Yeah.
you think?
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do the transportation right before school starts.
Definitely. So B&G then, please.
Right?
Whenever. Whenever.
When next week?
Next week.
Next week is not.
2
good for
weeks.
me.
How about the week of the 20th? You guys want to do it that week? Okay. I'm not on the
What
committee,
date?
so
What
I'm
date?
just. Are you on the
building
committee?
ground.
I am.
Okay,
The
Oh,
20th.
I'm gone that day,
you're out that
I'm
week,
gone the 20th.
20th, what about the 22nd?
The 22nd's a
I
Wednesday,
can't do
I
that.
got, coaching the All-Star
Can't
game,
do that.
gonna be Belmont by 6, but if we get it done before that, or.
Yeah,
or
you
later.
do earlier.
You can't do
Burns
it,
of
right?
Christmas.
I'll do whatever.
Which days? is it?
22nd, early there though, like earlier.
Yeah,
afternoon?
yeah.
'Cause you need to leave by,
Oh, probably 5:15.
So 4 o'clock.
4 or 5
I
possible.
can do early. When do
You
you
said
I
that-
can do it in the morning, I can do it in the morning, I'll do it in the morning.
I can't do the morning.
Well, how early? 4 o'clock or a little
4
early?
o'clock works with me.
So buildings and grounds will be the 22nd at 4 o'clock, Barb. And then we will schedule the transportation one at the next board meeting in July. Since we have a lot of things going on.
And then we'll schedule the interviews as soon as we
You talk to
get more
Rachel
info.
and they close. Okay. All right, anything else?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Shimmick and a second by Murray to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Okay, Linda will want these, to make sure these get.
July 29th is still, or June 29th is still June. For those, so you don't really want to hand them in.
You're right, you're right.
Just saying. I'll bring mine for that.
June 20th, it's still June.
Sure is.